We're going to go to item 5.1 in our information and reports, and this is our annual Student Senate update.
So I'm here. Hi, good afternoon, President Costa, Chancellor Christian, members of the board, Rebecca Rana Shaughnessy, the Vice Chancellor for Student Services. I'm very honored today to introduce the item, which is the annual Student Senate update. Students are the why for all of us here today, and the Student Senate has been a tremendous partner for the Chancellor's office and for the system, and they have shown great leadership, especially in driving legislative changes, providing insight in policy and practices, as well as providing critical voice in the system priorities and emerging issues conversations, pushing us to think differently and creatively to reimagine how we ensure the right structure to deliver educational experience to all students, existing learners, prospective learners, everyone who can benefit from the experience of the California community colleges. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Cassandra Flander Nguyen, the past president of Student Senate.
All right. Ooh. Hello, everyone. My name is Cassandra Flander Nguyen. I served as the president of the Student Senate for California Community Colleges, and it's my honor to be before you all today to give the annual SSCCC report per our Memorandum of Understanding. So if we could go to the next slide. So first and foremost, the SSCCC placed a large emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. For us, we have an entire internal committee dedicated to this. And this past term, we actually dedicated 2 chapters in our student plan of action towards these efforts. The Chapter 3 was on our Native students, and then Chapter 4 was on our undocumented students. For those of you who were there at our General Assembly 2024, you may have also seen we had a student panel regarding these 2 chapters as well. We also expanded the student panel to include our previous chapters, including Asian Americans, and making sure that all of our chapters are included in hearing the student perspective for all of our General Assembly attendees. Another thing is for our efforts regarding DEI, we also attended the Chancellor's Office DEIA Institute in September, where we were able to have participation in the workshops, and we were also able to have representation by being given the opportunity to discuss and also present to the entire institute on the importance of valuing the student voice, especially when it comes to our efforts in diversity. So that was a great opportunity for us all. And through our collaborative efforts with the Chancellor's Office, we really feel our DEI efforts have really advanced this past term. Next slide. Now, for our partnerships and coalitions, this past term, we also placed large emphasis on making sure our external partners are equally aware of what SSCCC not only is and does, but making sure they're aware of what is currently going on and relevance as well. So first and foremost, we ensured that we had increased student representation at our external partners' conferences. Examples include our FAC Advocacy and Policy Conference, Academic Senate Leadership Institute, Seesaw Student Leadership Conference, so on and so forth. But on top of our current external partners, we also expanded our partners as well. For example, we started a new partnership with the California Association of Post-Secondary Education and Disability, CAPED for short, so that we can ensure our disabled students have that organization that will provide them that independent support and being able to have a role in a higher education governance setting. And on top of that, we also ensured we had a presence in the research and planning group conferences and board meetings, or the RP group for short. We gave a report and also are in consistent communication with their leadership to ensure that through the importance of data and making sure that we are using their data and being collaborative with them as well. Now, for conferences, as you may all be aware, you may have seen a lot of SSCCC representation this past term, not only in California, but also at Washington, D.C. as well. This past term, we were in D.C. both February for the Chancellor's February Advocacy, but we were also there in March for the ACCT Leadership Congress as well. And we had a lot of positive feedback from not only our students who are in attendance, but from those who interacted with our students as well. Obviously, as we all are aware, the importance of the student testimony is of paramount when it comes to lobbying on both the state and federal level. And we really saw this in effect when we talked to not only the staffers and congressmen, but being able to interact with them as a group in pod as well was seen as well. So I think that was something that a lot of us were able to take away from it. And going forward, I really anticipate the SSCCC being able to ensure increased student advocacy in that level. Next slide. Now, for student leadership and training, one of our pillars is just making sure that our students are, of course, at the forefront, but we want to ensure that we equip our student leaders with the proper training and resources when they are advocating on the local level as well. Ways that we do this is by first and foremost going to the SBAs themselves or the student body associations, going on their campuses and being on the grounds with their student meetings, making sure that we have a SSCCC representative present. But on top of that, we also ensure our SBA leaders are trained on various aspects of being in governance, such as Brown Act, parliamentary procedure, student 9+1 rights, so on and so forth. This highlights SSCCC's goal towards making sure our leaders are aware of not only being put at the table, but being able to understand and participate in conversations. Because when you're at the table and you have students who are given a seat, but they have no idea how Brown Act works, or they have no idea how Parley Pro works, they often are silenced, even though they are technically given a seat at the table. So through this training, we ensure that our SBA leaders will not face this sort of obstacle when they're making sure the student voice is represented. And then on top of that, for all of our events, we had our inaugural Advocacy Academy. So typically the SSCCC hosts a fall event called Professional Development Conference, but this year we actually adjusted it and put a new spin on it, and we called it Advocacy Academy. We want to ensure that our SBA leaders are equipped with the knowledge not only to be leading, but also to be advocating and lobbying as well. So through the Advocacy Academy, we place a large emphasis on our legislation. How can students engage with legislators? What role do students play when it comes to these bills and policies being passed that directly impact them? So Advocacy Academy was an inaugural one, but regardless, we had over 400 attendees and we're sold out. So at capacity, trust me, it was very weird turning away students who wanted to participate, but through that, we had a lot of great feedback on how to not only improve the future advocacy academies, but also hearing about that was the first taste that students got of the SSCCC on a statewide level. And then in the spring, we had our typical General Assembly. Now, General Assembly tends to be our largest event of the year, and it's not only where our election for our statewide and regional officers happen, but it's also where students come together and vote on student-submitted resolutions all throughout the state of California. Now, personally for me, my first SSCCC event was General Assembly last year, where I was actually elected as well. So it's a very full circle moment to be able to talk to all 700 students who were in attendance this past term. And we were also nearly at capacity for this time. So we are definitely learning for next term to make sure we up our capacity and make sure that we can't deny any students to attend. But General Assembly, we had a record-breaking 60 resolutions submitted from students from our typical 20 resolutions in past terms. So this really highlights the engagement that we've had in this past term, and that directly relates to the data of going from 20 resolutions to 60 resolutions. These resolutions, a lot of them were on basic needs, and we all are aware students are talking, they're screaming at the importance of basic needs and how a lot of them are having this as an obstacle in their higher education journey. And we see this through the 60 resolutions that were submitted. If any of you are curious in your own time to look at the 60 past resolutions, please feel free to take a look at the SSCCC website. You'll find a packet of the final resolutions, and I truly believe this will help guide a lot of your collective efforts if you're ever curious. So feel free to take a look on the website. But General Assembly was overall a great time, and this happened in April. And for me, it marked the beginning to the end of my term. So I was definitely very excited, but it was a very stressful time, and I ultimately am very grateful to have been able to interact with the students and also with the advisors present as well. Next slide. Now for regional affairs. Now, for some of you, for those of you who are not aware, SSCCC operates through a region structure. So we are not just operating at the state level and then hope it trickles down. We have a distributed leadership structure to ensure that all areas of California are represented through some sort of leadership. So through this, we have 10 regions all throughout region 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. I don't need to explain numbers, but with our regional affairs, we've also seen increased engagement and retention when it comes to our ability to engage with every single region as well. If you take a look at the screen, we provide some data because we all know how important data is. Out of all of our 116 college delegates, we had 85 98.3% verified. And I do want to say what it means to be verified means that an SBA identified a delegate, had a delegate fill out our verification process and form, got verified, and are then participating in region meetings. So this is a very great number. It's a regular B. So of course, we're always shooting for an A, but through this, 99 out of 116 college campuses being verified is a very big feat. And on top of that, breaking it down for our leadership, as I mentioned earlier, we are a region structure. So we have regional officers. Out of our 20 director positions who serve on the statewide level, 17 of them at the end of the term were filled, which is an 85%. However, I would like to say at one point in our term, we actually had 100% officers filled for our board of directors role. And this was the first time in SSCCC history. So I think this, again, really shows our engagement with our board of directors and the students' interest in being involved and being part of that solution. Now, going down, I do want to talk a little bit about this new accountability rubric we used. So we have this region structure, and we identified a way for all of us to be able to look at our own regions and think, okay, like how are we ourselves as a region doing instead of looking on a state and collective level? So we introduced the region report card. The region report card is the same as, your old school report cards of, having a rubric and understanding the different areas you're being graded on. However, the spin that we took on it is that one, it's monthly. So at the end of the month, our vice president of regional affairs, in collaboration with our student interns, will work together to evaluate what areas is our region lacking in at the end of January or February. How can we improve on this, and what efforts have been done? Examples that the region report card covered are our budget. How much of their budget are they utilizing? Have they had trainings on this? And so on and so forth. So this is something that was recently implemented and is, of course, being further developed as the years go on. However, I would like to say that a lot of our officers were able to use this report card as a tangible way to see their efforts and how they can improve as well. And of course, for the board of directors on the statewide level, we want to ensure that we're keeping ourselves accountable as well. So something new we implemented is by not only typically at the end of the term, we do a board of directors evaluation. We look at what we did as a term and think, okay, like where did we mess up? What are areas of improvement? So on and so forth. However, we identified how about we look in the middle of the term so that we can improve for the second half of the term. So we did a mid-year evaluation, and from this, we were able to identify areas of improvement and improve from that point so that our end of the term evaluation is a little more perkier than, looking at all of our mistakes and being like, oh, can't do anything. So that was definitely a lot more conducive to being able to grow as student leaders and as a board as well. Next slide. Now for legislative affairs. So I know we just got off of David's, wonderful update, and it's very hard to go after David, but talking a little bit about what SSCCC has been focusing on. For SSCCC, of course, a huge reason why students get involved with us in the first place is our role in legislative affairs. So of course, we want to make sure that we're ensuring our students get that opportunity as well. So looking on the screen here, I won't go through line by line. I will spare everyone that, but I will say some of our key accomplishments is, again, making sure we expand our federal advocacy. So as I mentioned earlier, we made sure that we had more of a role on the federal level and putting students directly in the table instead of having students' story said to a faculty or classified, and then that person says the story. We made sure that we allocate funds for the students to be advocating on the federal level. But for some of our bills, you can take a look. We sponsored AB 1855, which is the Brown Act bill to adjust the provisions, and then AB 2033 by Reyes. This one is one that a lot of our student submitted resolutions actually talked about as well, ensuring that college campuses apply to have at least one location on campus except EBT. Now, this is one bill that, again, a lot of our resolutions covered because this covers basic needs. And you'll see throughout all of the bills that we support, co-sponsor, or sponsor will reflect the amount of feedback that we get regarding basic needs and what they're really covering for students. So I do want to talk a little bit about, at the last point there, March and March. March and March, which of course, I think a lot of us nodding our heads, this is a collective effort with a lot of other organizations. However, this March and March was one of our largest, of course. We had a lot of students, which I think was very, very important, but I might be a bit biased. But with March and March, we had a lot of students participate in lobby visits at the state capitol. And I personally saw a lot of increased student participation after March and March when it came to our legislative cycle, not only in participating in forums and surveys, but also just asking questions to the leaders, asking, hey, I heard about this bill. What's the update on this? Oh, like I talked to so-and-so staffer. Do you know what their role is in this? And increasing students' ability to ask questions is our biggest goal. So March and March made that an objective and helped us accomplish it as well. Next slide. Now for our strategic plan, you may be aware of it at our last General Assembly. This was adopted, and this is something that has 12 objectives in 3 key areas: our infrastructure, student participation and activation, and policy and advocacy. This past term was the first year that we implemented the strategic plan, so a lot of our efforts were guided by the plan, and I can say personally that we have made great strides towards the accomplishment of the objectives. The strategic plan is segmented out so that by March of 2025, March of 2026, so on and so forth, it has our objectives for us to follow, and it has been a guiding light for all the efforts we have been doing. Now, for SSCCC's goals for the strategic plan, we're ensuring that our student leaders are also aware of what the strategic plan does, because we realize that our staff, of course, are aware of the strategic plan and our top leaders. But when you talk about it to students, they're like, why does the SSCCC follow a strategic plan? What role does it play? So that's sort of what we ensured by talking to students about it. Next slide. Now for operations, this is more of the back end with our staff. One biggest thing that I can say is this past term, we introduced a new paid student internship program. So this is one that a lot of students really benefited from, not only by just being able to be part of it directly, but being aware that there are opportunities for students to not only contribute to higher education, but contribute while also being properly compensated. Because a lot of students, college students, are broke. So with this implementation of the program, we are not only setting the precedent for other higher education industries, organizations to pay their student interns, but we're also ensuring that SSCCC integrates the student perspective, even on the back end with staff operations. So that's been one of great importance. And I can say personally, the student interns have been a big role in ensuring that they are in the back end of supporting students, being on the grounds, helping out the elected officials, so on and so forth. And I do want to say for our staff in general, they have also been on the grounds, giving trainings, making sure that they're connecting with the SBA advisors. And that's been something that a lot of advisors have been giving great positive feedback on as well. Next slide. So in summary, we had a lot of growth. I think that's evident through all the data I provided, but on top of that, also evident through the feedback that you hear. When you interact with a student, you hear positive things, right? Now, I think the SSCCC's goal is to ensure that when a student is able to be at the table, they are not only at the table and given a seat, but also their voice is amplified at the table. Because without the student perspective is just a perspective and isn't gearing towards our collective efforts. So that's been something that we really focused on. And again, I might be a bit biased, but I do feel we have made great strides towards ensuring that students are uplifted in this manner. And one thing I will say is we also worked a lot on our external partnerships. And I know for me personally, as president, a large part of my role was engaging with external partners, but we also increased knowledge of what our external partners do, what role they play in our system. And our students are able to engage with our partners directly instead of simply going to the president, asking questions and the president going through it. We ensure that our students themselves are aware, what does Academic Senate do? What is FAC? What do they do? Things like that is ensuring our students are just educated. But not only that, we also provided our external partners with that platform to engage with students directly. So it's a two-way street. And I think a lot of us can agree there's a lot of benefit on both ends for that. Next slide. Now, for the goals of this current term, technically, is we really want to build upon the efforts we have done this past term. Now, a lot of it is going to be talking about the student outreach. As SBAs are coming back to school and going through Club Rush and tabling, we're going to make sure SSCCC plays a direct hand in not only educating student leaders, but engaging with a typical student who's walking around campus or is on Zoom. So that's going to be a new emphasis placed this coming term. And another thing is we want to continue focusing on accountability, because ultimately us students were elected by our fellow students to represent them. So we want to ensure we're keeping ourselves accountable in accomplishing their collective and common vision and listening to the resolutions as well. Next slide. And yeah, here's our shameless plug, but you can, if you would like to be updated with what the SSCCC does on a daily basis, please feel free to follow us on any of the following platforms there. However, I will say that our website will be the best place for any centralized information and is a great way to be able to just be in contact with what we're doing and get information on our following events as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that report, Cassandra. Colleagues, any questions or comments? Board Member Epstein.
First of all, that was an excellent presentation. I really appreciated it. And you know, when the bill was passed, it gave the Student Senate some resources. This is exactly what I think we all would have hoped would come out of it. This great organization with accountability and planning and training and partnerships. And I just think you guys have done a terrific job.
Yeah, I want to just echo some of what Board Member Epstein said. Like, I, as an organization, am so thoroughly impressed by the scale, the scope, the systems you've built. And I think in part it started with the legislation and the fee, but also the way you've operationalized it with the strategic plan. I think it really just deserves kudos, and we can really see you guys are cooking with gasoline right now. And that's what we all really wanted was, some stability and a structure to make sure the student voice is always front and center. So thank you for your leadership in that, and an excellent report. Board Member Haynes.
So thank you. So we on the Board of Governors get to interact with students much more so than sometimes the general public. And I've had a few friends who have returned to school, and they're younger than me, but they are semi-retired, or they're going for a class, and I'll get a phone call that says, the students I'm with are fabulous. They're helpful, they're thoughtful, and these are sort of unsolicited. And I think it's really important to hear that. We don't always necessarily hear that. And one of the things I say is that when I see students, even the everyday student, I have a relief that when I move on, there's a generation that's coming up that's thoughtful, that's engaging, that understands its role, young, playful, joyful, and want to have a good time. And that's the youthful part. But I have no fear that I'm leaving, and that you guys will follow. Your generation will follow and will do good work. And I just wanted to leave that with you.
Board Member LeGrand.
I won't repeat what's been said. I just wanted to add one more comment that I'm really continue to be totally impressed. And like Pam said, I know the future's in great hands with the leaders. The one thing that I wanted to comment on was I looked at your visitation to the 116 campuses and where you guys were as far as traveling throughout the state and making sure your engagement with students on a local level was a part of your strategic planning. And that's really to be applauded, because that's a lot of territory to cover. Even as board members, we can't that functioning. So I just wanted to continue to support you in your efforts in engaging students where they are, and in making sure that every one of the 2 million plus students that we have within our system are feeling represented. And I think you guys have done a great job of doing that. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thoroughly impressed with your presentation, former President Nguyen. I'm wondering if there's like term limits, or can you run again? Speaking on behalf of faculty, our students are amazing. I see it every day. I work with students every day, and it's a privilege to not just mentor, but to learn from you, because we have some outstanding students like yourself. I'm sitting right next to Casey, who was a fantastic board member. I just wanted to commend you again with all of the amazing initiatives that you put into place. And I see these new relationships. I know we've had a conversation privately before, and I want to commend you to your outreach here and forging those new relationships with like Umoja, and I see you've attended the Amend conference. And so obviously as an Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, we talked a little bit about obviously also outreach to other groups, including of course Apache, Puente, and other groups, especially also with the Napié Student Achievement Program. I think there's a lot of potential there. And so with the new leadership who is coming on board, obviously I know you're going to do the outreach, but your work demonstrates the excellence of our students. And so much kudos to you and your team. And I think you're moving in the right trajectory. And I think we can learn from you, from what we're doing here, obviously as Board of Governors as well. And you are truly inspirational. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, I'll open up to the public for any comment on this item.
The public comment period on item 5.1 is now open. We will begin with public comments in Sacramento. You'll have 2 minutes. I will hand it over to Vice President Aguinaldo to begin with public remarks in Sacramento.
Thank you very much. We have 2 public comments. The first one from Cheryl Aschenbach and the second one from Latanya Parker. If you could approach the podium and speak in that order. Thank you.
Good afternoon, President Costa, Vice President Aguinaldo, Chancellor Christian, and members of the board, and especially good afternoon to you, Cassandra. I have said in many venues, I am repeatedly impressed with the leadership of our students, and my expectations get raised every time and they continue to exceed. I want to speak most specifically to the partnerships, and I'm glad that you mentioned that late in your comments, because we see the Academic Senate sees the Student Senate as valuable partners in this work. We may not always agree, but we have a lot we can learn from each other. And when we share a position, that we are strong advocates. And so not just having a regular liaison between organizations, but checking in between our executive directors, connecting at Consultation Council in venues where we are both present and sharing space. I think those are powerful opportunities for students and faculty to collaborate. I want to point out most specifically, in June, we held our annual faculty leadership event. This has been a long time Academic Senate event, but 3 years ago, we were approached about, could the students join for a period of time? You're talking about things like Brown Act basics and budget and governance, and student leaders could benefit from this as well as incoming faculty leaders. And so we did a trial of that a few years ago, fine-tuned a little bit last year, and this was our 3rd year, and I think it was an absolute success. We had just over 100 faculty members in attendance, and I think it was 30 students, simply because we had a cap in our space at 30 for students, and are already planning on having conversations about how we can expand this and perhaps morph a bit to not just be a faculty leadership institute with student presence, but truly a leadership institute that includes collaborative sessions and then the separation where appropriate of faculty leadership and student leadership topics. But absolutely fantastic for our local campus leaders, to all faculty leaders, to be in collaboration with faculty and to think a little bit more, and as well as we think model the potential for collaboration on local campuses, that this isn't just a beneficial statewide approach, this is a beneficial local approach as well. So huge kudos to the work of the Student Senate and the incredible leaders in that space.
Good afternoon, Chancellor, as well as Board of Governors. I am Latanya Parker. I serve as the Vice President for the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges. You all have left no room in terms of the comments for the Student Senate, but I do want to commend them on the work that they've done this academic year and their collaborations. As my colleague has just spoken about, I have this past year witnessed as their liaison the intentional and deliberate work around their strategic planning and their collaborations with Academic Senate. And if you were impressed with their presentation on today and you have not attended one of their meetings, you just wait and attend one of their meetings, and I commend them on the academic and professional matters overlap and the work that we've done this academic year. Thank you very much for listening.
President Costa, we do not have any hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you so very much. Great presentation, Cassandra. Thank you.